So broken line graph. Table of contents. So first, history of broken line graph. Second, definition or description. Third, advantages and disadvantages. Fourth, when can we use the broken line graph? And lastly, examples of broken line graph.
Introduction. A variation of a line graph is called broken line graph. But let me present first the earliest known pioneers who used broken line graph. First, Francis Oxby. In the early 1700s, an Englishman named Francis Oxby used broken line graph for his design of electrostatic generator, a feat stemming from his studies of mercury. Next, Nicholas Samuel Kakayas. He was a Dutch land surveyor, cartographer, and land reclamation engineer. Here is an example of his diagram using broken line graph. This diagram shows the distance of the planets to the Earth in 1732. This also shows the complete lunar eclipse and partial solar eclipse in that year. He also used the broken line graph to illustrate a plan to pump the Harlan's Lake dry, in which he was commemorated by naming the museum under his name, and that is Museum de Kakayas.
So next to Nicholas Samuel is Johan Hainrich. So he used broken line graph to interpret the result of his discovery that education is a right that everyone should have. And the next is William Playfair, so credited for inventing area charts.
Definition or description. Broken line graph. A diagram in which a line formed by light segments connects the points that represents the data. Is a type of chart used to visualize the value of something over time. Broken line graph is a diagram that has a horizontal axis divided into units of time and a vertical axis that displays the values of the qualitative characteristics studied and in which the data recorded and represented by points that are then connected to one another by segments to form a broken line that illustrates the evolution of the phenomenon under consideration. The broken line graph is particularly useful for representing the distribution of a qualitative statistical characteristic.
Variables of broken line graph and the definition of x and y axis. Now, what variables used for broken line graph? The variables used for broken line graph are the x and y axis. Let's go to the definition of x and y axis. X-axis is the principal or the horizontal axis of a system of coordinate points along which have a value of 0 for all other coordinates. It is the line representing the independent variable. Independent variable is the value that is not dependent on the second value. Y-axis. Y-axis is the secondary or the vertical axis of the system of coordinate points which have a value of 0 for all other coordinates. It is a dependent variable and in a positive direction.
The advantages and disadvantages of a line graph. Here are some benefits of having a line graph. You can easily show the data changes over time over a line graph. It is also helpful to show small changes that are difficult to measure in other graphs. A relationship between two or more variables get identified. It presents good impression of trends and changes. And lastly, both negative as well as positive values are indicated. Here are some limitations of using line graphs. Plotting too many lines over the graphs make it cluttered and confusing to read. A wide range of data is challenging to plot over a line graph. And lastly, they are only ideal for representing data made of total figures such as values of total rainfall in a month.
When can we use the broken line graph, or in what situation or circumstances can we use a broken line graph? We can use a broken line graph when we want to show a change in something over time, like a change in distance over time or a change in temperature over time. Next, we use broken line graph when tracking the changes over a short or long period of time. And lastly, we can use broken line graph when we compare changes over the same period of time for more than one group.
The broken line graph is particularly useful for representing the distribution of a quantitative statistical characteristic. We often use it to illustrate a phenomenon that evolves over time. Broken line graphs, also called line graphs, are used to show changes in data over time. They display trends or patterns and helps us to make predictions.
Example of broken line graph.
So table, ice cream sales, Monday $410, Tuesday $440, Wednesday $550, Thursday $420, Friday $610, Saturday $790, and Sunday $770.
So first, let's make the vertical scale go from 0 to 800. So, ang kalayon niya nga atong i-use is $200. So, yung gap is 200 jud each. The next is put labels. Atong labels nag-use diri is sales. kaning sales mo ni siya ang ato ang y-axis, mo ni siya ang dependent variable. So next nga buhaton is draw a horizontal scale with thick marks and labels. So mo ni siya ang horizontal scale. Mo ni ang days of week, mo ni ang horizontal scale. And same ra gyapon og buhaton as vertical scale nga kita mo kon og tick marks and labels. So next is put a dot for each data value. So if mag-put ka og dot, dapat sakto jud nga pagkabutang dina. The next is imong buhaton is imo na ni siyang kanang connect ang mga dots. Tumo ni siya ang atong result. So based on the broken line graph, I can get the general conclusion that sales of the ice cream in a week is apparently increasing and decreasing.
Then important, make sure to have a title. Title, need to title. Next is vertical scale. Muna ang x-axis, then horizontal scale. Vertical scale is y-axis. Horizontal scale is x-axis, and data points connected by lines. Mo dyan ang need jud kaning data points connected by lines. Then write a conclusion jud. Write a conclusion statement about the information displayed on line graph.
Examples of broken line graph. Now that we have already learned how to plot the points on a broken line graph, let us now proceed to the next part, which is the interpretation of these graphs. So this slide here shows a figure that represents the time of a round-trip journey driving from home to a popular campground and back. So before we answer questions, let us first identify the parts of this graph. So in the x-axis, it shows the time, while the y-axis shows the distance from home, and it uses the unit miles. There are 3 places involved here: the home, picnic park, and the campground. Now let us answer the following questions. How far is it from home to the picnic park? Since this question asks the distance, let us look at the y-axis and locate the picnic park. So the answer will be, it is 40 miles from home to the picnic park. Next, how far is it from the picnic park to the campground? Since it involves 2 places, let's locate them on the graph. And to find the distance between the two, let us subtract the values. So campground is 100 and picnic park is 40. So 100 minus 40 is equal to 60 miles. Next, at what 2 places did the car stop? This question does not involve any solving, so the answer will be the car stopped at the picnic park and the campground. This ends our presentation. We thank you for listening.